Hello, Roftwood. It's me, Zombie GG with the Roftwood Coordination Center, proudly presenting you with another post-apocalyptic production I like to call an RCC Fireside Chat. I'm interrupting my regularly scheduled Soldiers of Crossman series to share with you folks an awesome conversation I had with one of the game's most legendary players, Bosch. This fellow started his career in Malton 10 years ago in 2009 and has made quite the legacy for himself. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Three, two, one. Bosch, thank you so much for joining me in my latest RCC Fireside Chat.
Hello, you're welcome.
Man, there's so much I want to talk to you about. The first thing I would like to know is, what were your early days in Urban Dead like?
Okay, so in May 2009, I was basically looking for a game like Urban Dead. I just didn't know it existed yet. I've always been really into zombie media and the post-apocalypse, and the previous year I'd played a lot of Fallout 3 on the Xbox, and so I didn't have a gaming PC at the time. So I remember it being really early in the morning, and I went looking for some kind of basic lo-fi MMO RPG set in a post-apocalyptic setting where everyone was a real player, and then that's exactly what Urban Dead is. I was so happy when I found it. It was like it had been designed for me.
Yeah, I also love the zombie media, the post-apocalyptic setting, and when I first got into Urban Dead in like 2006, there really wasn't a lot of free MMO type stuff out there, especially for folks with dial-up connections. And Urban Dead was super cool just because of how lo-fi it is.
I wasn't on dial-up at the time, but I had incredibly slow satellite internet that was just, it would drop out, it would be incredibly
unreliable.
Yeah, and so Urban Dead being incredibly primitive and based around essentially a database and browsers, it was perfect. But then I remember the early days, the game only gives you like 50 AP a day, which you can blow in 60 seconds. The real thing that hooked me was probably the wiki, because there was so much history on the wiki, so much stuff to read, filled me with lots of ideas. And
what was some of the first stuff that caught your attention?
Stories of big sieges,
like the Kager malls.
Yeah, like it seems strange now because we're talking about events at least 10 years ago, and the game's been around since 2005. But the game kind of seemed in 2009 to be dying. Like, I didn't realise that there was still going to be a couple of really good years left in it, and so a lot of it was kind of with a sense of sadness that, oh shit, I've missed all of this stuff. Like, it's really cool to read about it, but like, I want to actually be doing it myself. That's kind of where a lot of my motivation to become a group leader and to try play every side of the game came from. It was that sense of like, shit, I've missed out already on so much stuff. Like, I need to be able to write a bit of my own history in there just so I feel like I've got something out of the game.
Yeah, like you put your signature in Malton. It's cool, you have your little tale, your character and what you did and who you did it with and who your enemies were, your friends, what buildings and epic battlegrounds you fought on.
It's like, in reading the history on the wiki, I kind of just wanted to be part of that. But it took a while. First couple of months I was pretty much just learning the game. I was very much pro survivor. I think most people want to be the hero in their own story, and I was pretty much the same. I viewed it like the original Dawn of the Dead. I wanted to be Roger or Peter and go around blasting zombies and sleeping in malls, and I wasn't very much of a trenchy. I didn't particularly go outside and say boom headshot and shoot zombies on the street. But I remember December 2009, like half of the city, literally one half of the city, the eastern half, was totally ruined, just barely any sign of life there, and it was like a wave of zombies that crept
overnight or
westward. Well, they moved maybe like a suburb a day, but it was like a wall of death like of
Wow.
ruins and zombies, and hundreds of zombies would appear, and I was that annoying survivor that goes around getting NT scans and
I
going into
love
safe
doing
houses
that. Necro
and
Watch.
being, yeah, and being like, oh, there's 40 zombies on the NT scan now, and then coming back like 8 hours later and being, oh, there's 60 zombies on the NT scan now. Like, good luck, everybody. I was that kind of player.
Yeah, I love Necronet Access. I spend a lot of action points doing that stuff.
I mean, I've not done it for years. And I only ever did it sporadically after that, but it's such a cool little feature that's kind of like little used.
It gives you like a picture of a game board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For the audience, what we're talking about is necrotech buildings are where you get the needles that are required to revive our friends who fall and turn into zombies. But also in these buildings, if they're powered with a generator, it gives us access to this feature called Necronet Access. And if you click that button, it like projects like a map image radar thing of the surroundings of that building you're in, and it shows all the zombies around you. It kind of paints a map and like a mission for what you and your friends are supposed to do. You're like, oh, there's like 10 zombies outside that hospital. I guess we're gonna go over there and try to do something about that.
It's probably not as useful now as it was then, but I mean, there were probably about 25,000 active characters in the game at this time, late 2009. So, you know, there could be 100 zombies on a block, and using Necronet to see them kind of coming across, like say they move from east to west across the map.
Yeah.
Exciting times for me as a kind of still fairly new and naive player, still very much in the
So who
survivor
was this giant
mindset.
group that spawned in 2009? Do you remember their name? Or was it just a conglomerate
It wasn't
of forces?
a giant group. I remember talking to Amber, who was at that time leader of Mob. She said it was the RRF and Mob, maybe a couple of other groups. A lot of the big zombie groups at that time kept in touch with each other so they wouldn't eat food from
They wouldn't like poach each other?
Yeah, because also they had like a lot of members in common, so it created all conflicts, and they'd just generally avoid each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, she told me that their tactic was kind of like to do spirals in like quarters of the map, and it would eventually create like dead zones, and it would push survivors together, and then they would eat them all. And
That's pretty cool.
like I
That's
say, it
clever.
ended up with at least half of the map pretty much totally ruined. And
Wow.
then because there was no food in the eastern half of the map, they all gradually pushed westwards. But then going into 2010, the game got really boring and safe.
So zombies just like ate everything and then they just went away?
They
How did the game get safe in 2010?
As they pushed west, survivors moved into the east and repaired that, and then I don't know, the game has always been kind of rigged against zombies. It's really hard to have an impact on the map citywide.
Yeah.
But I mean, they managed to, because there was not only was like the RRF and the Mob, the Undeadites, there were lots of like smaller regional zombie groups. There were also lots of ferals back then.
Oh yeah, that just followed the groups and just ate off the bones left behind.
Yeah, or people that just stuck to a suburb and harassed a building or a couple of buildings repeatedly. You don't really get that as much these days, just because there isn't that many zombies. Like there's 5,500 buildings and there's less than 1,000 zombies, and each zombie's got to use all of their AP just to maybe get into a VSB building.
What happened when the game got super safe for you?
Well, after that Christmas, I started making some new characters. I intended on making a PKer, but then I spawned next to a survivor group called Them, teaching Haslock's enemies manners.
Wait, what? A survivor group called Them, in all caps? What's the Them stand for?
Teaching Haslock's enemies manners, because they were based out of the Haslock building in Chancel Wood.
That's pretty awesome. I have not heard of these guys.
They were, at the time, I guess, infamous for being really coordinated, when the likes of they were one of the few groups that could repel zombie strike teams. Mob came up, got repelled a couple of times. The funny thing is, there's always been a kind of divide in survivor groups where you had the trenchy survivor groups which were formed of players that were militantly anti-zombie playstyle for the most part, and then survivor groups that were like alts of zombie or PKer players. The groups that were formed of like survivor groups that were formed of alts tended to be better at the game because they had more experience, because they'd played zombie and they knew how to counter zombies, and they'd played PKer and they knew not to wind PKers up, that if you get killed it doesn't matter, you just get revived and you carry on. Them were that kind of group. They were, they had lots of people in zombie groups and PKers, and they were smart because they were based on IRC as well. They could basically no life the game and just repel.
Yeah, they're just so coordinated. IRC was like the fastest communication method back in the day.
For playing Urban Dead in kind of a weird real-time way, it's really, really good. There's no guff on the screen, messages are sent really quickly, it's just clean, direct, fast. Playing with them opened my eyes a little bit. They would talk about like their PK alts, or they had a couple of players that played in mob, like some of their mob strike leaders, who were kind of like tentatively throwing me invites to join mob or trying to encourage me to play zombie. I didn't take them up on the offer straight away, but I did then start playing PK a little bit, especially as the game got really dull and boring between sort of February and May 2010. Just like too many green suburbs, survivors had the majority population. It seems quaint now where the game's been ridiculously safe, except for individual hotspots like Roftwood or Whitenside, but the map seemed overly safe for months. Then I was starting to get intrigued by the zombie playstyle. I always thought zombie groups, you had to be a bit of a masochist to play as a zombie. I also thought they were quite elitist. Now, it's true, to be fair. Zombie players are generally a bit elitist because it's really fucking rough playing as a zombie. If you can make it as a zombie and you get into it, you do get a bit of an ego and an attitude.
Start off with like, every time you move once, it costs 2 action points. It's so savage.
Yeah.
Growing up as a zombie, especially by yourself, if you're not in a group, it's like brutal.
It's so unfair, and even when you've got skills, you have to work with other zombies just to get anything done.
So I get it. By the time you become a high-level zombie, you're just like...
Yeah, you've got a bit of an attitude.
You're ready to eat everything and bite everything and ruin everything. I love it. It's like on Human GG, my zombie character. I don't know, it's easy street these days, but I do remember the early days. Life was hard. It was like impossible to do anything by myself.
It's no wonder this game doesn't have very many zombies, because unless you join a group and are fed. What I mean by feeding is the experienced zombies weaken a target, and then the inexperienced zombie finishes it and they get the XP bonus, and you just rinse and repeat until they've at least got some claw skills and can walk around and can take headshots. But I'd been playing the game for almost a year as we were approaching summer 2010, and I just needed to play zombie. So I took my Pro Survivor to Ridley Bank, and my intention was I was going to live among the ruins of Ridley Bank as a survivor until I got killed, and then when I got killed I was going to join the RRF.
Cool.
But I did that for like a day or two, and then I heard about an event called Escape, which was being promoted by a guy called Captain Video.
Captain Video. So this is 2010, some event called Escape. I haven't heard of this.
Okay, so Escape was probably the most glorious clusterfuck, or one of the most glorious clusterfucks ever seen.
Okay.
Captain Video was a survivor who had an uncanny ability to promote his idea and get people intrigued, but had absolutely no game sense whatsoever. He didn't really have a good grasp on the mechanics. He didn't really have a good grasp on the group meta. He was very, very naive. But he promoted this event called Escape, where survivors would go to the Ellicott Place railway station building in like Oswaldly bank or some really shit suburb that no one ever went to. Like, even when the game had thousands of players, it was like the shittest suburb.
Some suburbs just have crap layouts and no one wants to do anything.
Yeah, it's one of those suburbs. He picked a terrible building to get people to gather, but like as May went on, it just spiraled out of control. I think Escape had like 500 tagged up people on the stats page at one point. I'd say a good 350, 400 of those went to Ellicott Place. The plan was, it was a very silly, naive RP-styled plan, but because the game had been safe for so long, survivors were going to mass at this building in Captain Video's head, and Kevin would open the border or stop the quarantine and would let people escape. Obviously, that was never going to happen. All that was really going to happen was...
What a deranged dream. It's like you spawned a cult and just like, we're all going to go here and wait for our great creator to like do some... I don't know, just total fabricated, no hints. Kevin's never dropped hints that he'd ever do anything like that.
I know, but it like I say, it worked. Hundreds of people turned up, and inevitably, hundreds of zombies also turned up. So the plan was that, in again Captain Video's mind,
and he
on
leads
June...
this escape group or this event.
Well,
I'm trying to find it on the wiki real quick.
We'll get to whether he lead it, because I ended up kind of taking it over. I saw an opportunity.
You inherited this thing from this Captain Video character?
Okay, so on June 1st, supposedly the escape would happen. People started turning up at this particular building a week early, 10 days early. And as you can imagine, none of these, like, there was no IRC for it, there was no forum, there was just a wiki page and just Captain Video on the radio. So there was no leadership. It was an absolute clusterfuck. All of the main zombie hordes turned up. PKers turned up.
Oh man.
And I'd been in the area. Like I say, I was starting to turn kind of pro-zombie a little bit in my attitude, despite having not really played very much zombie.
Sounds like the game was just getting boring as a survivor. Everything was safe.
It was, and so I turned up mischievously to kind of spread pro-zombie propaganda, and I saw an opportunity. I thought, all of these bored survivors in the one spot, once escape fails, and it was inevitable that it was going to fail, they're going to want something to do. Like, wouldn't it be good if all of these bored players could be turned into pro-zombie players and then unleashed on the game? Like, it made sense in my head, so I turned up in the area and was spreading like pro-Baja propaganda and trying to convince people to play zombie. But then I got really sick of just the panicky clusterfuck in the building itself, and so this is around a time when there was a service called Tiny Chat where you could make like little chat rooms really easily. You would do tinychat.com/Ellicott and that would make a room, kind of like a really shitty version of IRC.
Okay.
So I made a chat called Ellicott, and I spray painted it and told people in game, like, we should at least coordinate. Because I did that, and because people then started viewing me as the leader, and because I was a bit opportunistic and thought, these people don't have a leader. Like, Captain Video would do his propaganda radio broadcast, but like I say, he had absolutely no sense of what to do with all these people. I was very enthusiastic about the game, and
well, it seems like you just had a interest and perhaps a talent for orchestrating folks. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of different ways you can play the game. Not everyone likes to be like an orchestrator of people. Some folks just like doing the propaganda. Some folks like just going through the motions of repairing stuff and fueling buildings. Some folks just like clawing. Sounds like you were starting to get an interest in leading.
Yeah, I was just more opportunistic than anything. I just saw a power void, and I saw how I could fill it, and I knew it would fail, but it'd be really fun. Despite me saying that Captain Video was quite naive about the game mechanics, so was I. I wasn't as naive, but I ended up getting like everyone killed repeatedly. I made the chat, and it worked for the first day and a half. There was just enough coordination amongst the core of like 20, 30 people who joined the chat to repel zombie attacks, and we managed to keep the zombies out for like a day and a half. But then,
Are you guys still just
inevitably-
hanging out in this like trashy suburb?
yeah, like still hundreds of people. Like I said, I quickly kind of just assumed the role of leader, and so I told people once Ellicott was lost, we would occupy the buildings around it, and then they would inevitably lost, and then we would occupy the buildings around that, and then they would inevitably lost. So this kind of
The slow exit.
yeah, this sea of ruins gradually spread out from like the kind of from the side of the map to the point where it was like a suburb wide, where the whole suburb was
Ruins.
ruined. In hindsight, I knew what I should have done. I should have just organised revives on the Ellicott block. Just ask people, if you want to revive, come into our chat, give us your URL, we'll revive you, then lie on the floor until June 1st comes, then we'll all stand up at the same time, reclaim the building, and see what happens. I knew it really wasn't going to work, but it was a better idea than my just occupy the buildings that are still up around this kind of ever-expanding sea of ruins. But what also happened is zombie groups, like representatives of zombie groups, turned up in my chat and would start talking to me. I remember Zug, who was the leader of a unfortunately very zergy group called Extinction, who were like the most militantly anti-survivor group probably the game's ever been, to the point where they would cheat, like just openly. But he came into the chat like after it had been open for about an hour and started giving me pro-survivor advice. I think he was that embarrassed by what was going on, and then quickly followed by representatives from the RRF.
Was he embarrassed for you?
I think he was just embarrassed by the survivor response, like what the survivors were doing. But he was so embarrassed that he, like I say, he was incredibly militantly anti-survivor, and he came and turned up and started giving us advice.
Oh man, it even hurt, like got through him.
Then,
I just want to get this straight. It sounds like you go to this event organized by Captain Video, this like escape event, this like city's so safe that people are just bored and they're like, Kevin, let us out. We're all gonna go here and just let us out. Like, we won. There's no more zombie threat. And then you go over there and start spreading like Barha propaganda, and then you decide to like play the pro survivor role. It's so interesting. You're like a twisted dual nature metagamer.
Well, I got embarrassed by what was going on in this helicopter. It was incredibly panicky. It would just be like people shouting, like, "The Cades are down!" in game, and then like a zombie or two would get shot, and someone would try and rebuild the Cades with like 10 zombies inside. It was just a mess. It needed someone to at least coordinate it, to try and direct it, to orchestrate it.
Yeah, just point a direction, you know?
And no one else seemed like they were going to do it. Captain Video himself wasn't going to do it because he didn't have a clue on what to do. So I saw the void there and filled it. But I filled it kind of knowing that I still wanted to try and convince people to turn zombie at the end of it. That like all these hundreds of people in one spot, that could be turned into a horde.
And then the game could be fun again.
And then the game could be fun again. RRF and Mob turned up in my chat, and so I started talking in kind of like back channels to them, not necessarily about the event, just more like, how can I come and join you when this is all over? The days went on, we got closer and closer to June the 1st. By like the day or two before June the 1st, when everything was lost, there was no chance that we were ever going to reclaim even Ellicott Place, the railway station that Captain Video had sent everyone to. There was no chance we were ever going to clear it. There were hundreds of zombies inside. They'd been holding it for a week now. They also knew, obviously, that on June the 1st there was going to be some kind of run. So I'd convinced the kind of core of the people left that we use in our chat to
turn
basically
Zed.
to turn zombie. Like a bunch of us symbolically, we stood up and we did our rush on the building on June 1st.
Wow.
But there was maybe 10 or 20 of us that were like, we're not going to win. This is going to end up in our dying. But when we die, we'll all symbolically buy brain rot. And
so
then
you like premeditated this, and then you all did it on June 1st, 2010?
Yeah, like we did our rush. We all got eaten. It was really fun, actually. It was really exciting. We
Sounds
knew
like
it was
a cool
fucked,
time.
but At the same time, a couple of days before June 1st, Big Bash 3 was announced. Now, I'd floated this idea amongst anyone that would listen: when we all die, we should go zombie and we should form a horde. But then Big Bash 3 was announced and it was very easy to join. All you did is you added Big Bash 3 to your profile, and then you just followed them around the map. So that became the perfect vehicle for all of the core of people that bought Brain Rot. That became like, shit, there's a ready-made group for us to join as well. And because of the way Big Bash 3 was presented, where it was very casual, very fun, very orientated towards people that had never, necessarily played zombie before, but were interested in it. Big Bash 3 probably wouldn't have been as big of a success as it was if it wasn't for coming off the back of Escape.
The timing was perfect.
Yeah, it was perfect, especially as you had someone like me, like pushing people, like, this is what we should be doing.
You pointed the direction.
I pointed the direction, but then the established zombie meta community that formed Big Bash 3 really carried it, because at that time I wouldn't have been capable of leading zombies. I'd never took part in a zombie strike. I'd never led a zombie strike team. I'd played a bit of zombie casually when my character died, but I didn't really have any idea how to do it the best way. So
yeah, the tactics and strategy and stuff.
The people that listened to me, like the survivors that had listened to me from Escape, I just pushed them towards Big Bash 3. I joined as well. It was really good fun.
So that's pretty eventful. In your first year of play, you've had like a pro survivor guy, you're like being the hero of your own story, and then you had a PKer dude, and then finally you make a zombie person, all within like your first year of play or whatever.
Very few people seem to
branch out like that.
Well, very few people seem to branch out like that, but most people also start definitively as a survivor. So
yeah, that's what
it's taken me a while to get there, but I eventually started playing zombie and realised that zombie and PKing was kind of what I enjoyed more. I'd started off so militantly like pro survivor, and then a year later I just wanted the world to burn. I just wanted to eat people and to shoot people and to have fun whilst doing it.
It's kind of cool being the bad guy, and the game needs bad guys,
It really does.
Welcome back, Roftwood. This concludes the first part of my series with the legendary Bosch. Please stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. This RCC Fireside Chat is a post-apocalyptic production proudly presented to you by the Roftwood Coordination Center. I'm Zombie GG, and Roftwood, the pleasure's been mine.